Yeah.
All right, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Town of Culpeper Planning Commission to order. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Syria?
Here.
Mr. Flanagan?
Here.
Ms. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Clemens?
Here.
Mr. Fitzpatrick is absent.
Okay, the first item is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have an agenda. Let's see, approval of minutes from the March 26, 2026 work session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, for discussion before we vote, I have one note on the minutes. Under the capital improvements plan, it's on the top of the second page. It says staff to provide maps of, and there's a blank there. And I couldn't remember what it was. I think it's something Mr. Fitzsimmons had asked for. Does anyone remember what staff was supposed to bring? The staff was going to provide maps of. Does it have to do with that walkway space that connects the
I
parks?
think it had something to do with the new park,
I didn't bring my notes.
the new trail.
We'll pull the recording and fill in the appropriate specific identifier.
All right, and then just call me and I'll come sign. All right, so everybody okay with that change to the amendments that the staff will add, whatever that should be?
Yes.
Okay. All right, with that adjustment, all those in favor? Aye. All right, so we have minutes. Okay. We reached comments and correspondence from citizens, visitors, and delegations in the audience. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on any matter not scheduled for public hearing tonight. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Okay. You just state your name and address for the recording.
Todd Brown, 720 Zeuswin Drive here in Culpeper. I'd like to, can I hand something to everybody for a second? Is that okay?
Hand it out, sure.
I mentioned this last time I spoke. This has to do with the development here at Zeuswin. I think you've all had a chance to see the property. This photo you have in front of you is of Top Golf. And every Top Golf has this tremendous fence around it. Not just to retrieve balls, but to keep from balls hitting automobiles. I got that arrow there. It looks very similar to what Zeuswin is, right next to the fairway. And I am not aware of a single substantial road next to any fairway for this reason. Today, my wife told me she found 2 golf balls in our yard, and that's substantially further away than the road is. Oftentimes, we see balls passing the road, hitting the road, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how many times balls will be hit into that road. It's right next to the fairway. And I just found out today, doing a little homework, that in Virginia, it's not the responsibility of the golfer, interestingly. It's the responsibility of the driver or the person walking if they get hit. Interesting. So if you're going to put this road with that kind of traffic, perhaps, right next to a fairway, are we going to want to put a fence that's 200 feet high, like Top Golf has? That's interesting too. So I keep, as I said last time, I time my travels. If somebody's teeing off, I stop, I let them tee off, and I go. There's an occasional time that I miss that, and I just pray that they're not going to hit my windshield. But it's going to happen. If you get more traffic on there, it's going to happen regularly because you've got cars coming in that direction against the way the guys or gals are teeing off. And most golfers are right-handed, and many golfers slice balls. And there's so many that go into that road right now. It's going to happen. I just want to bring this to your attention because this photo is a great example of why Top Golf has these 200-foot fences right next to the fairway. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak tonight? All right. Okay, seeing no one, we will move on. Okay. So next item is unfinished business, Zooswin Drive rezoning. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we do have before us for discussion this evening the Zeuswind Drive rezoning application. We have received from the applicant and their attorney a draft proffer statement. This was identified as something that could be submitted to help mitigate some of the impacts and some of the adverse impacts that were identified by the neighbors at the public hearing. So they have submitted draft proffers that address prohibiting a number of uses that were they identified as being incompatible with the adjoining residential development. They have committed to an architectural theme, committed to performing a transportation analysis to identify the necessary road improvements associated with their development. They've committed to making the necessary constructions and improvements to Zeuswind Drive, as well as to the dedication of right-of-way. Staff has had the opportunity to discuss these with the applicant. We have some observations that we've shared with the applicant, but really the purpose of this evening is for the Planning Commission to have a chance to weigh in and share with the applicant what their thoughts are as far as what some of the adverse impacts of the proposed development could be and ways that the applicant could potentially address these adverse impacts with their proffers to mitigate them. I believe the Planning Commission did also receive a letter from some of the neighboring property owners earlier today, or email earlier today, requesting that the Planning Commission essentially have an open conversation which they identify anything that they wish to have more information on from the adjoining property owners, so that those could be submitted in public comment in advance of the next public hearing related to this matter. So I'd be happy to take any questions that the Planning Commission has. The applicant and their legal representative is here, and I'm sure willing to answer questions as well. So at this stage, I'll turn it to the Planning Commission.
Mr. Hipple, of what zoning is the applicant requesting?
So the applicant, the rezoning at the moment is for commercial C designation.
Well, we requested it for them.
Actually, I did, yes.
Yeah. So, all right. And so essentially under the uses here, you just basically start with what's permitted under the C, and then just, I mean, is that how the process would work? I mean, essentially they started under the C and said, all right, we won't do, A through J.
So essentially, yes, that the applicant did look at the use table contained within the UDO, and the uses that they have prohibited here. All would be uses that would be permitted under that zoning designation. So they've gone down and ruled out a number of those.
So I guess it's also appropriate to note that the Commonwealth has changed what can happen in commercial since it was recommended into what it's going to be.
It has not changed yet. We'll be touching on that later this evening in terms of some of the legislation that's been contemplated. There was a bill that made it through the House and the Senate. It went to the governor. The governor has recommended some changes. And so we'll be touching on that later this evening.
Yeah, probably be best to decide after we know.
Well, we're not deciding anything this evening.
I asked that to further to the discussion as to what's the Commonwealth is going to allow versus what we thought.
Well, in this instance, the bill that was most relevant to this, as far as being permissive of residential development in commercial districts, that bill failed. So that one is gone for this year, at least. Again, it could well come back in future years, but for this year, it is no longer being considered. So if that was where you were leading,
that's where I was leading. Yes.
Yeah. So that one has failed.
So I think it is important to note some of the previous conversations we've had about this property. I mean, one specifically was that we did see some future commercial use, you read, for that property, that some of our initial concerns with the original mixed use request to change to commercial was specifically tied to residential. I mean, adding additional multifamily residential there.
Right.
That even going forward, we would, if you were looking for best use of the property, if it seems like it would be something that would lean much heavier toward commercial to satisfy the demands of that area of town, which also includes, the additional houses that are already being built, in that turn, the one that's behind the Rite Aid, plus then the town or whatever the development that ends up coming right there by on the other side of the rehab, right, Culpeper Rehab. And so all of that is sort of creating more and more demand for commercial services on the south side of town.
Right.
And so so I just want to, be clear as we, as we as a group, think about how we got where we are now. I mean, the idea is that not only does the future land use map sort of identify that area, but that we also have, in reviewing this property, we can see that there is a demand for some piece of commercial on that side of town. Does anybody else have any questions for staff about this proffer statement specifically?
I do have one. On the proffers, on the transportation part, he said Zealand Drive shall be 44 feet. Can you click on a minimum of 44 feet? Because during stages, you may decide that it should be wider. If the proffers only say 44, then we can't go wider.
From staff's perspective, we would recommend taking out that 44 specifically, not so much for the ability to go wider, but actually for the potential to go narrower.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. Take it out.
Yeah,
I would appreciate
from
taking
staff's perspective, we would recommend the more appropriate language would probably be something along the lines of a sufficient width to accommodate the traffic as demonstrated in the transportation impact analysis. We would recommend keeping the 60-foot right-of-way because even if we have a narrower travel lane, that provides us with opportunity to have the shared use path, but also, as was raised earlier, potentially have additional trees or landscape and vegetation to help serve as a buffer there as well.
The only thing I have in mind is I think the roads in Culpeper are too narrow anyway, all of it. And to have a new development go in and reduce or specify a smaller amount of width, I think would be a problem. Anyway, yeah, take it out altogether. I appreciate that.
Yes.
It seemed to me that there is the difficulty with developing, and I recall the history, but the difficulty with developing that part of the town commercially was the very limited access, which is through this one road. And so it seems kind of intuitive that holding up the door open for potential commercial development of that land implies holding the door open for increasing the road size. It's not going to be viable for people to come off the reason it's a rational place for commercial development is it's at the edge of the town and people coming off the freeway presumably could go in there. But if it's very difficult to get from the freeway to there, and notwithstanding the closeness, as the crow flies, it will be difficult to develop in that way for commercial use. So I'm kind of a little perplexed about how we think the road might be narrower than 44 feet, and we want to limit its width.
Again,
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just see a kind of a tension there.
it's more a situation of not knowing what the ultimate use of that property is going to be.
Right.
It's difficult to ascertain what the traffic generation on that's going to be.
Right.
And the danger or staff's fear is if you have something wider or oversized there,
Right.
it does lead to a tendency of increased speeds on those roads. And particularly with this having a residential component further on with as being described, people walking along here, we want to ensure that we have as safe a scenario as possible.
So building it narrowly to begin with would not preclude the option to broaden it were the commercial development to proceed and expand in that area over time, not within the next 6 months, but over 10 years or so.
It's certainly good. Again, we would look to make sure that we were able to obtain the full right of way necessary for improvements. But again, I think you also don't want to be penny wise, pound foolish in terms of undersizing it initially if if the known ultimate build out is going to require a larger road, because the mobilization costs and what have you would make that cost prohibitive to do that.
I'm sorry, that would happen at site plan stage anyway, right?
Correct. But they have included it in their proffers as well.
Yeah, if you put it in the proffers though, by giving a specific number.
Oh, no. And I agree. I agree that the 44 could be problematic.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
But, and I will say, in the applicant's defense, the reason that 44 is in there is that is the number that is in the existing proffers of the parcels that front on Madison Road. So those commercially zoned properties,
Okay.
that has, they had pulled the language that relates in those proffers, so that would be consistency.
If we can modify it so the 44 comes out.
Well, and then they may be modifying those proffers at some point in the future, in which case we would have that conversation.
Andrew, is it possible that a traffic study conducted later would identify uses for that property that would not basically work with the road? I mean, if they said that, I don't know, a Chick-fil-A there would generate 1,000 car trips a day, and that entrance to that basically would Vita. I mean, would the traffic study catch something like that?
So what we would look to do, again, the traffic study needs to take into account background considerations as well. And because of what this would be zoned, in addition to what they have proffered out, we would look to capture and reflect the most intense trip generating uses to be able to contemplate essentially the worst case, the most impactful scenario, and would proceed accordingly from that to make sure that there was necessary accommodation for that to take place.
Anyone have any other questions for Andrew? Anyone have any questions for the applicant? All right, so next steps.
I think the applicant would like some guidance on where the planning commission feels they're at relative to the proffer statement that's been submitted. We've heard from one member that the belief that the 44-foot specific curb to curb width should be removed. And then sort of staff has conveyed that to the applicant already as a concern that we had. But are there any other observations that the commission has, as well as there was the request from the citizens that the commission sort of have the open conversation as far as any other information that you would like to help you make the decision in advance of the public hearing that could be submitted through open comment?
All right, I have one other question for you then. So the circumstances that precipitated all this were obviously unique because we were going through a different process, the DPO process. Typically, in this, in Culpeper or anywhere else, right, any other locality, a project, this is a relatively large track. It's a relatively complicated traffic situation. It's certainly a situation that would lend itself, because it's right on 29 or visible from 29, to sort of fall under sort of like an unintended consequences kind of, even though, we're saying these things out loud. But typically with something like this, would the locality know what the use was going to be before the rezoning?
different localities have different approaches to this. Most of those that I've worked in have frowned upon what they call speculative rezonings, where there's not an identified end user in play, so where you can know exactly what the impacts are going to be and to address them specifically. Where you do sometimes see the speculative rezonings are if localities are seeking to encourage development or encourage something to occur in a particular area and to stimulate development occurring there. So it certainly is, it can be done. It is done in places. But the vast majority of the time, from my experience, localities tend to frown upon the speculative rezonings in general and look to have a defined end use in place.
I mean, so for me personally, I mean, if I were just in order to sort of conceptualize all of this, I would like to see, you know, instead of exclusionary proper, some sort of inclusive or inclusionary, right? Something that gives it would better help us better understand, you know, what the idea is here, and what, you know, so that we would have a better sense of the impacts. I mean, I think that this situation is complex enough that it does seem like just a sort of I think that there are enough possibilities that we're not thinking about that you know, especially when our conversations, you know, anyway, those initial conversations that talked about you know, what the needs of that, you know, area are, and certainly what some of the, you know, things that the area doesn't need. And so I just think it would be helpful for us if we had more, you know, sort of positive language. That's my 2 cents.
Well, possibly when the applicant comes up to speak, they could propose what they consider the best 3 uses of the property.
Well, is that a question you'd like to ask the applicant?
I think it would be.
All right. So the applicant is here. Is there someone here who could speak to that question? And you don't mind stating your name?
Yeah, of course. Well, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Matt Roberts with the Hirschler Law Firm on behalf of Zeuswin. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. To that specific question, I think I might bring Al up to, you know, think a little bit more about, you know, their long-term considerations for the site. In advance of that, if I might, just very quickly, into some of the points that were made about why were the proffers on the uses exclusionary versus inclusive. Part of that has to do with, you know, what I would say is a very commendable job by the town staff and the community in adopting your UDO. Candidly, it made it quite hard to put on paper proffers that we might otherwise utilize in other jurisdictions. You've adopted effectively a form-based code that tells us, you know, what your building design should be, where the setbacks are, your building heights, the building forms, how you want the landscaping to look, and basically how you'd like the development to look. I think that's a wonderful thing. Makes it very hard when you do have sort of a forward-looking rezoning to say, well, these are all the things that we would do, because candidly you've told us what they are. So I think what we would say, at least to that point, is let your UDO do the hard work. You've done the hard work of adopting those standards. You know, your site plan review is going to be rigorous in terms of what your facility standard manual is going to require from us, what your zoning ordinance is going to require from us. The long-term uses of the site are dictated in your zoning ordinance already. We've tried to get rid of the ones that we think are just incompatible along that set of streets. And at that point, I might turn it over to Al real quick to speak to, you know, some of the things he's been getting, say, from folks out in the market and, you know, looking at his site. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Al Caldwell. As far as your question as to what will go there, like Matt said, we don't know. I can tell you we get a lot of comments from people who live in the area or live in South saying, you know, we need a grocery store there. I hope you put a grocery store, you know, or we need a restaurant, you know, on that end of town. Of course, it's not up to us. We're not developers. It would be up to someone who come to us and say, hey, we would like to put a grocery store there. And for us to decide whether to sell it to them. So, long and short, that's the answer. But I can assure you, we want whatever goes there to be nice for Culpeper. We want it to add to the community. And, Susan's family over the years has made sure of that. In that area, you see the not Rite Aid, but now Walgreens, the Mulberry Commons, Mulberry Greens residential behind that was all part of Mr. Clore's farm at one time. He sold for those. The nursing home, he thought Culpeper needed a nursing home, and it did. The golf course expansion, he gave the club the land for 5 additional holes because he thought that was nice for Culpeper, and so we want to continue that. As far as the speculative rezoning, I know that's a concern, but also want to point out that last year in the UDO, there were 69 properties totaling roughly 150 acres that were speculatively rezoned. There was no ask for proffers or this same question of what's going to go there. And again, I think I've said enough, but we want whatever goes there to be nice for Culpeper.
Just a comment. Okay. I would think if this is zone commercial, there would really be commercial enterprises that would probably approach the town or approach the landowner about ideas they had. Certainly Wawa's and other gas stations are heavy in town, car washes, whatever. So I'm thinking it's probably more going to be who approaches the town or the owner of the property to say, we like to have this commercial enterprise here. Am I wrong?
No, and I believe Mr. Caldwell has made this point in the past, and from my experience, it's true as well. Land certainly does become more desirable for development if it is already zoned for that development. The uncertainty of having to go through a rezoning process does serve as an impediment or a deterrent for developers.
I mean, I think that I would just like to see whatever commercial development went there would be something more targeted to the town residents who live on the south side of town than something targeting passers through who are just coming down, 29. Great. Because that would create more problems than it would solve.
I agree. Plus, it would cut down the traffic through town that we all complain about, as well as you had some of those amenities that are on the north side that are now on the south side. Much needed.
Yeah, just something as basic as shopping options.
Right.
Well, I mean, they're so close. I don't see that area is reasonably close to like Southgate, and there's
Well, you but think about it, just traffic
the
flow.
Weiss Star. Where the Weiss Star is. I don't see.
Well, think about something like I don't know, clothing, right? So if I live on the south side of town and I want to go to, I don't know, TJ Maxx or Walmart or Target or any of those, the direct path is down a 2-lane main street. So basically we funnel all of that traffic through Main Street every day. And so if you had, just say you had some sort of, small retail, that's just a, hypothetical, but you could assume some use. Let's just even, I mean, I don't know that it'd be great, but even a McDonald's would basically, take some of the stress off of that stretch of Main Street that gets busy and stays busy, because not everybody would have to drive straight down Main Street to go to the McDonald's.
So we wouldn't have to anyway. It's much easier from there to go out to 29 and up to 666. And I think the local people probably figured that out. I'm guessing that most of our through traffic comes from folks who are driving through who aren't local. But without survey data, it's hard to.
Yeah, I don't think so. I feel like, yeah, I think that a lot of people going from areas like High Point, neighborhoods like High Point, to Walmart and going through town.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hopewell, what's the minimum acreage for planned unit development?
We don't have a minimum acreage. It could be done on any size if appropriate. The thing is, with the UDO now, it grants a whole lot more flexibility of uses than the prior zoning ordinance. So in this instance, I'm not sure the planned unit development would really be necessary.
Thank you.
We've just to step back, to circle back for a minute. You talked about an open conversation. I know I came in late and I apologize, but can you say what that is? I mean, it's not an open hearing, an open conversation.
The planning commission received an email earlier today,
Right.
from one of the neighbors, and so that's what I was referring to of just their request.
All right. Thank you.
I feel like we're satisfied to some extent. We've been having an open conversation here about, sort of what we think is an appropriate use for that property.
So what I've heard in terms of I'm having a conversation with the applicant tomorrow morning, is the planning commission's request to remove, at least from one, I haven't heard any objection, removing the specificity of the width of the road, to allow for greater flexibility for that to be adjusted. I've also heard for a desire to the extent possible for more specificity of the types of uses that might be there, as opposed to simply the prohibitions on some of the uses. I will note, from my experience and sort of from what I've heard from the applicant as well, it becomes a fine line in terms of what the market demands versus what the proffers may limit the development of the property being, because the market is going to cause there to be demand for whatever uses it may. And so the proffers are going to some extent, potentially artificially limit the potential of that property, which is, now again, if that's to satisfy the town's vision for what it wants to see there, then that's certainly appropriate to do. But I think we just need to be careful in working with the applicant to craft these, that we don't unintentionally limit the future development potential. And I think the applicant would attest that they have found that to be the case with the proffers that exist on those parcels fronting on Madison Road, when very specific layouts and things of that nature were proffered related to that. And the market has moved on from that particular period. It does limit the ability of them to sell and have those properties be developed. So again, it's going to be that balancing act. If the commission is comfortable with seeing this rezoned to commercial, what that proffer statement is to make sure that it is still viable for development in terms of the options of what commercial uses could go there.
Now, does VDOT have a chart that would say, like, fast food restaurant is X number of car trips a day, gas station is X number of car trips a day?
We use what's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers manual. They have traffic generation figures calculated by use, by the size of the use. So per square footage, whatever the use may be. So fast food generates per square foot so many trips per day. And usually when we're looking at that, we're focusing specifically on the peak hour trips, as opposed to the ones over the whole day. We're looking at the times of the greatest traffic congestion. But it's a fairly standard model that the engineers have, that VDOT uses, that the town uses to evaluate these.
All right. Would it be possible? I mean, I think it would be helpful for me if we as the planning commission had that information. So, I mean,
it is a manual about yay thick.
Why would you want that information?
Because like I was saying, I mean, I think that there is a difference between business that would, something that would the commercial use that would, you know, that would generate most of the car trips from town residents in that south side of town versus a business that would generate most of them coming from 29.
We're not determining what business is going in. That'd be done in the site plan. We're determining whether it goes to commercial or not. Was it going to stay residential or commercial?
We are determining based on the proper statement offered by the applicant, what any uses that we might feel could be additional exclusions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, what I'm saying is, if they want to put a Buc-ee's there, do you know what I mean? Like, just think of like the most outrageous thing that you could possibly go there in a C, and then you start to say, all right, so there has to be something that I'm just trying to think of. What are we not thinking?
Oh, you just want to add more to the prohibit list,
or add something to the pro list, right?
Mr. Chairman,
if
I may, I mean, another way that this could potentially be looked at is if the Planning Commission wished to suggest some limitation on the maximum square footage of development, or some limitation on the maximum trip generation of the development, something along those lines could be done as a way to ensure the appropriate scale of development on this parcel.
Like Mr. Clement's point, the unintended consequences of limiting that. Say, well, this sounds like a really good idea, but due to the trip generation, can't do it. So we paint ourselves in a corner that way as well.
That is a risk, and again, but it comes down to where the Planning Commission's comfort level is, and ultimately, again, to reiterate, proffers are put forward voluntarily by the applicant to mitigate identified adverse impacts of their development. So again, while the Planning Commission can identify these and suggest potential alternatives, it's still at the applicant's discretion as to whether or not they wish to submit those proffers.
Well, I think that so what I'm trying to do is identify that this traffic trip is a potential, problem for this property, specifically with the access. I mean,
but that would,
egress into that.
That would be determined at site plan stage.
It is something that would be evaluated, to Mr. Sierra's point, and it is listed in the proffer that the need for that traffic impact analysis, which is going to look at, as I said, the generation, the most impactful potential generation there, and identify the necessary improvements to accommodate that. And so that may be the actual width of the road, the number of travel lanes involved. It may identify the need for potential intersection improvements at the intersection of Zeuswin and Madison.
And me wanting to take that 44-foot width out, don't put too much in there that's going to limit a decision at the site plan. If we put too, I like the list of things that are prohibited.
Mr. Chairman, it's in my imagination, but is Zeuswin Drive only accessible if you're leaving town?
That is good.
If you come off 29 and heading into town, don't you have to make a U-turn?
No, there's a left turn lane there. There's a left turn crossover.
But you still have to.
Well, you have to turn left, yeah.
Yeah, turn left.
That's what happens when it's on the left side of the road.
I'm sorry, we're knitting, man. Not an engineer.
So, again, just talking freely here, we're talking about restaurants and Staples and Big Lots or a Belk or those kind of things down on that side of town. I'm just throwing that right there.
Right. And there's a big difference between, a sit-down restaurant and a Buc-ee's.
Right.
And both would be permitted under C.
Well, I'm the site plan, and I think Buc-ee's might be thrown out.
Right.
Is our quandary here because of dissatisfaction expressed by residents in the area Or is it because we're not getting the benefit of a proffer that would be tailored to a specific end use? That would intend to a rezoning application by a developer with a specific use in concept.
But they're not developing. They're just
Yeah.
for
No, but we're having a difficulty here, and I'm trying to figure out what is the causing difficulty. We're having what is making this hard.
I think the speculative nature is what, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. And so we're basically, while we're trying to figure out, we're also trying to mitigate risks that we're not fully aware of. So, I mean, we appreciate the impact we appreciate the input from everyone in the community, right? But realistically, this is a conversation about mitigating risk. And the biggest risk does seem to be car trips in and out of that property. I mean, anything that, let's say, like the nature of development, say, like an adult entertainment establishment, these kind of things. Yeah, this has all been handled in the proffer. So the biggest sort of outstanding thing we don't know,
Right.
and can't know, is the traffic impact.
And the number of trips generated, which would increase the length of the turn lane to be lengthened for the traffic stacking that close to coming off of the highway.
And again, to reiterate, that the transportation impacts will be addressed, but again, the scope and scale of those impacts may be larger than what the Planning Commission and the neighboring community is comfortable with. But whatever the proposed development generates, they will be responsible for putting in the appropriate transportation infrastructure to accommodate that. But again, it can have impact on the character, it can have impact on the commuting patterns or the driving patterns of the existing residents. So that's where the Planning Commission, I think, needs to weigh that consideration.
And under current zoning, it could be developed as a subdivision. Is that correct?
It could be developed as a large lot residential subdivision.
What's the current zoning?
It is RR, rural residential.
Okay, so could it be one of those high density town? It could be
Not under its current zoning.
okay.
Maybe 30 lots.
So if that were to happen, and traffic would be increased, but it would be modest, a very modest increase. So the contrast between traffic, in fact, between development under the current zoning regime versus development under the rezone to commercial regime is very substantial. The contrast, significant, potentially very significant.
So I think also the Greens too is going to have another relief coming down Zeuswin as an exit. So those cars that come down Sunset and come down Gulf Drive will then have relief going through the Greens to exit on Zeuswin.
There's not currently any connection between
Or is it? Yeah.
the Greens and Zeuswin. If it would be in a future phase that has not been submitted at this time.
Okay.
That tie-in likely would be much closer to the intersection of Zeuswin and Madison than further back along the private road. But there could be at some point in the future a tie into the Green. You're absolutely right, but it's likely not. The original contemplation why the proffers had the width and the 60 foot was that this in the current comp plan was contemplated as a collector street, a much larger street that tied in to the greater residential development in the vicinity. That connection essentially that connection potential has gone away with the development pattern of the Greens. And so the Zeuswin now is really slated to only serve these parcels with potentially the tie-in close to the intersection with Madison for the rest of the residential. But the majority of Zeuswin is no longer slated to be a collector road in terms of how it would function.
And so this Sheets idea there has also gone away.
That has gone away, yes.
And so that was part of the tie-in. I'm not.
That would have been on the corner itself. Now that is a strictly townhouse development proposal that's where is under review.
How many townhomes?
I believe it's approximately 220, something in that ballpark.
You wouldn't have traffic there anyway.
Correct. And so again, they have performed traffic impact analysis there. It does not warrant a signal, but they will be doing improvements on that very first part of Zeuswitten Drive as it ties into Madison.
But that's based on their impact, not the cumulative effect of everything.
Correct.
And so we're having a difficult time knowing what the cumulative effect is going to be and whether or not you don't even get to the hotels and you see a light coming into Culpeper. So everybody can turn left.
And you have a light that basically prohibits everybody who's trying to use the highway to get to 29 to go north or south, right? Just a few 100 feet ahead of that,
Yeah,
you're going to have a lighted interstate. It's going to be like, being out 3 Fredericksburg trying to go to 95, where you've got a light right above in front of the ramp.
Yeah, the traffic could potentially be stacked up on the exit, depending on how far back you are.
And again, when they do the traffic impact analysis, they look at stacking distances, stacking spaces, because that factors into how you time the lights themselves to ensure that you have that flow. And again, there's nothing that would say that a traffic light would be the necessary improvement here. There are other options that could be utilized in this instance. Again, we have a number of roundabouts in town. It potentially could be a roundabout that is identified as the optimal solution here. Again, without knowing what the uses are and what the generation, what the traffic volumes are, it's all speculation.
But that addresses Mr. Clement's comment that we don't know what we don't know. And it's whoever develops first has the least amount of work to do on Madison Resident.
True, but again, theirs is going to set up for the future development to be able to tie in much more easily than to the private road that is there currently today.
But we don't know what's going to happen on the other property. How can you prepare for it?
You can't fully. Absolutely.
So I don't think the position we're in is an irrational one. I mean, right? I mean, our concerns, I feel like have been reached at a conclusion of, basically more input. But I do think it would be interesting, to see. I do appreciate Mr. Serio's point that the traffic study should catch, but that's sort of where.
Again, if the commission's concern is the potential for the need for an intersection improvement there in the sort of along the lines of a traffic light because of the volume of traffic, there could be conversations had with the applicant to limit the trip generation potential of their development to something that would remain under the threshold to trigger the need for a traffic light at that intersection.
Yeah, I know that if we had, I understand that the manual's this thick, but if we had a list of 100 uses that would give us some perspective of, what is, literally what is a Buc-ee's compared to what is a Cracker Barrel. Just so because I think that you would give us a little more perspective, to be able to, to sort of see, to continue with this sort of vision exercise, which is in some ways what we're doing here.
We can look to share with the planning commission some recent ones we have. The tricky thing is, off the top of my head, I don't recall any recent commercial ones that we've had here in town.
It's hard,
but it's still a number of years ago.
Oh, you're so right. Okay. So the numbers you're saying, because it was years ago, the numbers would be lower than
they continue to refine the numbers. Is essentially what I'm saying, right? And sort of specifically as it relates to
what about the sheets that just went in?
We can certainly share the numbers there. The difficulty with Sheets and gas stations is that the majority of their traffic, they actually capture pass-by traffic more so than generating new trips to that particular destination. So Sheets tends to capture more people that are already driving along Brandy Road there than people making a specific new trip to go to Sheets. So that's why gas stations aren't a great comparable for commercial development.
We haven't had a shopping center development in quite a while.
Right.
That's because we have vacancies in the shopping centers that we do have. Yes, there's.
This is our long and vacancies.
So requiring
Especially where Charlie or things like that are, there's no vacancies.
There, oh, well, the Bell left. Big Lots left. Big Lots is still there. Is there anything? No. Is there?
It's closed. There's a sign there, but
Well, shows how often I go there.
it's empty inside.
Yeah. And it's just the world is different. I mean, people would rather have their retail goods dropped at their doorstep rather than go get them.
I think that's changing. I think malls are even becoming fashionable again, from what I understand. So who knows?
So, all right. So I guess just so you have some direction, we've identified the one road width, and I think we've identified we're trying to get some sense of how many trips, or something that would give us some better numbers on traffic generation.
Again, and this is why I was just make sure that I'm clearly representing the planning commission, that the applicant has a clear understanding of what the concern is. I just want to state, is the concern of the planning commission that the trip generations from this site would trigger the need for significant improvements at the intersection of Zeuswin and Madison? Or is there a comfort level with there being an improvement at that? Because as I said, the development is going to need to mitigate its impact, whatever it may be. So if it warrants a traffic light, they would be responsible for installing a traffic light before they're able to develop. But if the planning commission's concern is that the feeling is that a traffic light is not appropriate there, that's where I can have the conversation with the applicant to look to limit the development potential so that they stay under that threshold. But that's where I'm wanting to make sure that I have the understanding of what the commission's concern is.
So you can't do a traffic impact without knowing more about what's going to be there.
We can't do a specific on that,
Right.
but what we can do is state that essentially, if
There's going to be
the
some.
peak trip generation is this, that's going to be sufficient to trigger the need for a traffic light at this intersection. And so if they commit to keeping the number under that in terms of whatever development they have, again, this is where I'm trying to see.
Yeah, I mean, my other issue is the proximity to 29. That are you going to create a traffic jam 100 yards or actually 100 feet from the entrance?
And again, that's something that VDOT looks at very closely because, as you can imagine, they don't want to see impacts to the flow of traffic on 29. And
It's
so
more than 100 feet.
Well, let's say 100 yards then.
Well, more than that even, because you got the hotels, then you got the 7-Eleven, and then you got bigger area before you even get up to Zoon.
Yeah, all right, that's great.
It's quite a ways. I would think more in the area of 1,000.
1,000 feet. Yeah, I can see that.
So apart from that, what are the factors that would weigh on our decision as to whether or not a traffic light something like a traffic light should be allowed in that area?
Well, that wouldn't be ours. I mean,
Well, I'm hearing, am I mishearing?
no, what I'm saying is essentially if the planning commission does not wish to see it, then we would look to work with the applicant to ensure that the development potential of the site remained under what would trigger the need for it.
So in effect, the practical effect is that we preclude the whole categories of development as generating too much traffic.
Well, it wouldn't be, it would be the scale of the development as opposed to the specific uses. They potentially could have, if it was a high generator, they could have it, but in a smaller quantity or a smaller square footage of that.
It seems like normal zoning principles just aren't working out here for some reason. This is an extraordinary sort of contrivance we're backing into, it seems like.
I don't think there's going to be any traffic problem down there at all. look what you have on the north side. You have traffic lights right next to each other. And it's a long way from Zealand down to 29. It really is.
But on the north side of town, you have traffic lights that are actually causing a problem. I mean, if you don't,
Well, yeah, that's what
we're
we're
talking,
saying,
we're talking
right?
about J cuts and right, roundabouts and all that.
But they have a lot more than we're ever going to build there. You don't have their land.
I mean, the bigger thing to me is also that how much traffic will it generate from cars exiting 29 versus how much of that traffic would be coming from 10. And I mean, I don't know if that's fair or not, but I mean, like, when I look at that, it sort of as the end of town and everything is coming in and out of town, that's one thing. But when we're literally attracting traffic to come off of 29 for a use there that wasn't there before, that will generate additional trips.
Sure.
Well, if we look at the other south side of town, Orange Road, same thing there. It's not, and it's a lot of homes back in there, a lot of traffic going in and out. So,
Or Elizabeth Street is basically right there on the thing.
And you do have a commercially zoned piece of property right at the corner of Elizabeth Street and Orange. It's undeveloped at the moment, but because of its proximity to the interchange, they're not able to have a direct connection onto Orange Street there. Any development of that property is going to have to access off of Elizabeth Street, because that is the sort of thing that BDOT looks at.
I mean, I'm looking at the map now. I mean, I do agree with Mr. Serio that there is more room between 20 than I initially had thought. But the other thing, though, is just from a visual, if you put a sign up that said gas X number of, that people would clearly see it from 29.
That area of 29, didn't we have to give an exemption to
Wellspring.
Yeah. So they'd have to put a pretty big sign up and we'd have to approve it.
Yeah, what could they do for signage there?
In terms of height, for a monument sign, they'd be limited to 8 feet in height.
So they couldn't put up like a gas station sign there on.
Not unless they came through for a conditional use permit for a comprehensive sign plan that would allow them to craft restrictions outside of what town code would allow.
All right. So in other words, all of my concerns with trying to attract traffic off of 29 could be mitigated by the signs, lack of signs.
Well, they could still have building signs. So again, depending on the size and scope of the buildings, and again, they could be in relative proximity to 29 where signage could be visible from 29 that's situated on the building themselves.
Now, also 29 bypass, doesn't it have hotel signs? You got this hotel here, so you can add the gas station into those hotel sign type things, like you do on the north end of town.
Yeah,
I mean, that's way up front. I mean, it's not where the gas station will be, but
again, I can't speak with certainty for the industry, but I don't believe that a gas station is going to seek to locate that far away from the access point.
I see.
They're going to want to be have access directly off of Madison Road in order to be in this area. Because otherwise, they're called convenience stores associated with it for a reason, in terms of it's the convenience of being able to pull in there.
and there's a gas station right down the road, both directions anyway. I mean, on 29 bypass, there's like Sun or Exxon or something.
Well, there's an Exxon in Mountain Run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not that far.
But again, if the gas station is a concern, again, it can be approached with the applicant if that's something that they might be willing to rule out as a potential use of that location.
But you're right. The issue there, of course, would be that if you got a nice grocery store that also had a gas station component, like a Martin's, that right on the north side, somewhat if you wouldn't want to prohibit that either.
You have a 7-Eleven right there that has a gas station
Right.
just past the hotels.
All right. So, does anybody else have any comments or questions for Andrew at this time? I'm going to propose, this is sort of where we are. I think we're going to have to see it again.
The applicant is here. That they've heard the deliberations of the planning commission. We know we've got sort of the clear guidance on the one aspect, at least in terms of what the planning commission would like to see. They've heard the other one, so we'll have the conversation tomorrow to see what they come up with. We are going to schedule this because the proffer statement represents a substantial change to the case. We are going to schedule this for another public hearing. We're looking to do that next month so that it can move forward. Unless the planning commission feels that you need more time or more specific information.
All right, well, let's talk about one more thing real quick on this. Just so we're all clear, we do think that some commercial use here is more appropriate than residential.
Yes. Just from the location, yeah.
Okay, and it's been foreseen for more than a year in future, but planning maps, future use planning, for more than a decade in future use planning maps.
You're okay with that, Mr. Planning?
I think in order to get more commercial interest on my end of town, I mean, I've lived on that end of town almost 40 years, and there have been no new commercial ventures really undertaken, and everybody just goes to the other side of town because that's where it is. I don't know that even if changing the zoning is going to change that. We may wish for a clothing store. We may wish for a little itty bitty tiny Central Park type development. Just has a couple, could be the clothing store and a couple other things that we feel that we were missing on our end of town. But I'm really starting to feel that the RR is the better impact.
I get comments all the time about, when are you all going to put something over on this side of town? All the time.
Apparently there isn't the demand.
Well, there's going to be. I mean, like, right, we're building new houses in that area all the time.
But there's still commercial parcels right there on Madison Road. And I don't believe there's been interest for those either.
Yeah.
Okay, but all right. So this is so big. Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of services are people asking you to?
Restaurants, little shops, Staples. I don't know why Staples.
And again, I'll reiterate, the town and even the property owner can't dictate what the market is going to demand there.
That's right.
But to their point, and from my experience elsewhere, if it is zoned for that use, it is more attractive for potential development because there is that greater certainty for them.
If you build it, they will come.
Well, they don't have to go through what they're going through now. If somebody buys it, wants to build something commercial, they don't have to go through the rezoning if it's already done.
Right.
So that's sort of the incentive to rezone speculatively, and the con argument to rezoning speculatively is you lose the proffer leverage. Okay. Do we have, in Southgate, are there empty storefronts in Southgate, or is that all leased up?
Where Ace used to be.
I think it's all.
That's down the street from Southgate. It's the same. I guess it's the same idea.
I think it's full.
Okay. I cannot see the stores, the big box stores, Target and Walmart and so on, and Dick's. Those are not. You don't. There's no reason to have two of those in a community. Right. So those services are going to be that end of town only forever. And if there's evidence that if there are vacancies that like the Acme storefront that are on this side of town, that would be that we might suggest that the financial incentives or the consumption density here on that side of town are not sufficient to motivate businesses in any event. I'm curious whether what, how long, even if it's rezoned, how long it will take for commercial developer to try to exploit that land, particularly given the constraints, the access constraints.
I don't think we have enough rooftops yet on this end of town.
Because how do you decide what's enough?
When you have interest in, somebody comes to and says, I don't care what is zoned, I want to have it zoned commercial. When they're willing to put their money down, do a concept plan and said, here's what I want to build. All right. That's how you know when the time is right.
There's been a lot of houses in Lowe's and the Greens and Laurel Street, not Lowe's. Laurel Street and the Greens. There's a lot of houses growing up there. And
Well, it may just take the townhomes to just be built, which would be enough of a trigger.
okay.
Unfortunately, we have to, the demand almost has to reach a boiling point
Yeah.
before anybody's saying, hey, we really need this here and now, and I know this is a great spot, and so I'm going to build it.
All right, so the plan is that you'll advertise and we'll hold a public hearing in May. And all right, but you're going to mute the applicant tomorrow first to figure out if there's any other changes to the proffers.
Correct. We're gonna have a conversation based on what they have heard
All right, and then those changes would be reflected
and what you receive.
and in what
Your packet.
and what is advertised. Well, I guess the advertisement only has to say that the public hearing is happening.
Correct. We've spoken with
the-
the applicant, and we our desire is to have the proffers for consideration of that public hearing at such time we advertise, knowing that there is interest in this particular case, so that the public may be able to see those and have access to them as soon as we advertise the public hearing. They'll certainly be part. We'll look at them as part of the Planning Commission's packet.
Right, and so, and it is interesting. I mean, back to Mr. Fitzsimmons' earlier question, that some of these concerns that we have, expressed, do match some of the concerns of the neighbors, even though basically we've come to these same conclusions independently from this. So I think that if we're at a point where we also, if we're still not sure of how bad or how big the impacts or risk could be, I can't imagine that the neighbors wouldn't want to express similar, probably in a much different way, similar concerns to, what the potential impacts would be.
And again, relative to the email that the Planning Commission received this morning, there could be an opportunity for the citizens to reach out to the Planning Commission and let them know, again, as we had the conversation about what scale of transportation impact might be acceptable or not acceptable, that could help to inform the Planning Commission with their discussions with the applicant at the public hearing. Again, the proffers that come into the public hearing before the Planning Commission, there can still be changes made to those when it goes to public hearing before Town Council, who makes the final decision. So if the Planning Commission makes recommendation that additional mitigation may be necessary or additional limitations to ensure that there's not those adverse impacts, those can be incorporated into a proffer statement amendment before it goes to Town Council.
Driving down that area and looking really opens your eyes to see what it looks like.
At some point, I'd also be interested to know what the town, if the golf course is a nuisance, because, its very presence there is a threat. You're right. I could be walking down the street, clunked in the head by a golf ball. To me, that's the golf course being a nuisance, not me, right? And so it'd be interesting to know what remedies would the town have.
And I can't speak to the Zeusman Drive specific one or Mr. Brown's experiences, but I do know I live in Lake the Woods. Behind us, we have a golf course that has a road that literally runs between two fairways. The road actually bisects the golf course there. They have Further down, they do have a driving range that does have a large net up that was described there, but the fairways themselves do not, and they are the road. There's no protection or no barriers between the golf course on either side of that particular road. So there are instances out there of roads that are adjacent to golf courses.
All right, thanks. Okay, so you're good with, you know where we stand.
I believe so.
Everybody else good to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. All right, next we're now to new business. First item, conditional use permit for Baptist Church signage introduction. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Culpeper Baptist Church is looking to come before the Planning Commission, hopefully Town Council, requesting a conditional use permit for a comprehensive sign plan. This is to allow them to have a variety of different signage on the site of their property for the various different uses that they have in there. I'm going to run through what we've received so far. Staff is also planning to walk the site with them and identify, because we believe there may be a couple other ones that are not identified here. Our goal is to ensure that they have identified everything that they currently have and everything that they foresee themselves wanting in the future, with the variety of uses and activities that they have on that particular site. So the first thing that they're looking to do is to convert their existing monument sign to an electronic message board. This is something that is permitted. They won't be able to have dynamic graphics on the board, but they can certainly have static messages that change at some sort of delayed interval to better help spread the word of the message.
Like lumens limit or anything like that?
We have limitations related to the lighting spilling off site, and so we would evaluate it against that. Would ask for a lighting plan at the concert with this when it came through to ensure that it wasn't shining into the adjacent residential. So that's a conversion of the existing sign that they have there. They're also looking to have some wall-mounted signage and branding of some of the particular entities that they have within the building there. The large one of the large size sign, and then 3 smaller ones between the windows there.
Now, a question for you about that one. Sorry, I mean, I appreciate everyone that we're basically work sessioning this. Right. To me, that doesn't. I mean, I think that a big part of this was wayfinding, that they needed all of these signs so that people knew where everything is. But to me, that just looks like an advertisement, like a billboard. And I'm trying to figure out what other business we would let put that. I mean,
Is it all signs? A billboard?
I mean, some are,
Advertisement?
some are just name.
Right.
Like,
And again, we can't regulate content, right? We can regulate the sign size, the sign type, but the content, what is on the sign itself, under the First Amendment, the locality.
and the UDO wouldn't apply here. I mean, I'm
Because
just
the
thinking,
UDO applies in terms of what the sign regulations are, but the UDO also grants the ability for them to apply for this comprehensive sign plan. So when we provide you with the staff report on this, we're anticipating, again, this coming to public hearing next month with the staff report. We will share the comparison of what would be allowed by right under the UDO versus where they're looking to essentially exceed
thank you.
what's permitted there.
I don't see a problem on that. Mr. Culpeper, what's the view? Is that the back with the building or?
So this is looking at essentially from their large parking lot.
The side of the building.
Southbound West Street.
Okay.
I think this is complete. The front sign is, I mean, are we at the point of expressing opinion? No.
I think so. I mean, we're basically work sessioning that.
And fine, nice. Distinguish it, just tidies it up a little bit, brings it up to the 21st century. This is really garish. I don't understand how they could be pro or argue after this kind of signage. It's completely out of character with everything around it. It doesn't form a form-based, doesn't conform a neighborhood character. I don't understand. I mean, God bless the church and so on, but I don't understand it. How that's a plausible presentation. First, speak for myself personally as a resident.
The top of the pack is it's not commercial. It's,
Well, I think I would argue it is commercial in that it's essentially advertising for both their senior center and their the Bryn Mawr educational facility on the site.
What he means is it's not taxed like it's commercial.
Well, I agree with Ian. Isn't some of that information going to be on the electronic sign that keeps changing?
It certainly could be.
Okay, so
Maybe this is the only one we have issues with. Let's keep going.
We can keep
Yeah.
going. And again, it's
not.
the
not
other
okay.
thing that's tricky here is that again, these appear to be almost banner-like signs. They would
Yeah.
not banner signs would not be permitted. They would have to be actually manufactured, fabricated signs
Okay.
on the property. And again, that could be a condition. Again, a conditional use permit. The town has the ability to impose specific conditions, but I will caution you that we cannot tie those to the content itself. Okay.
It's almost reverse. I mean, the request for permission to do this is almost a reversal of arguing on the basis of content. There's no mixed use that could be in this area that we would allow to put up signage like this. The only justification for doing it is because of contents. And that's not allowed, right?
I'm not sure that I follow, I'm afraid.
Okay, I will retract and reconsider.
But you're not worried about the electronic sign?
No, I think I'm not worried about that at all. I'm worried about this one is what I'm reacting to.
Oh, okay.
I'm probably overreacting to. I apologize for my
a limit to the number of signs per square foot or anything?
There is. The UDO does have limitations depending on which frontage it is. On the primary frontage, they're allowed 2 square feet per linear foot. On the sides and the rear, it's 1 square feet per linear foot. So again, this is what we will provide you in the staff report, that comparison for what they're asking, because these may well be, we haven't run the analysis yet, but these may well be within the realm of what's permissible by right under the UDO. And again, the UDO we didn't really change our signage standards relative to what we had.
What did they consider to be the front of the building?
In looking at it, it's the as it faces West Street.
Right.
Okay,
There's the orientation
Yeah,
of the
right.
building.
So it is much smaller than this.
So this likely would be the 1 square foot per 1 linear foot of building.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
And that was just built not that long ago, about what, 5-10 years ago.
Oh, that extension? Yeah, probably somewhere in there. Ken, you're yeah.
Seven signs right there.
All right. So yes, let's go.
Thank you.
So this is, I think, some of what was talked about in terms of the wayfinding. These are that they've identified as the tenant menu board signage, especially the listings of sort of in different locations around their campus. So that they would have.
Does the ordinance have anything to say about whether the signs are inward facing towards the property or outwards facing towards the street?
To some extent, as I said, that's partially related to which frontage it's on.
Right.
With the scope and the volume of signage that they're allowed to have.
Why would you have an inward facing sign?
Well, in a situation like this, for example, the middle pillar there, you could have that sign facing inward. People walking in could use it to wayfind with, and it wouldn't impact the visual of the folks driving up the road.
That's a new point.
Traditionally, we've seen the signs being outward facing. I can't think of too many examples where we've had the inward facing signage.
Yeah. Okay. I was just asking if the ordinance has anything to say about if there's an inward facing fine, is it even affected by the ordinance? Have anything to say? About it?
It doesn't. It would still have to count towards
All right.
their maximum. Again, primarily because it doesn't really contemplate that. They're looking for some directional and wayfinding signage on the site. These are the sort of 2 of their entrances.
And the reason these are affected by the ordinance is that they're visible from the street.
Well, again, all signage is covered under the ordinance.
And these are not temporary signs. They look like the kinds of things you stick in the ground, but they're not.
Correct. No, we're understanding these to be permanent signs that they would be looking to install. I think they're more again, these are not necessarily reflective of what the final product would look like, but the location, the scope and scale in terms of a size impact of where they would be. Likely be something on a white, relatively plain, but on a white background, but just helping to provide directions to folks entering the
I
site.
mean, like that left picture is the drop off and pick up at the child care side. So they just want some sort of directional there, I guess.
Yeah, it's coming up with Scanlon.
Yeah.
So, and again, staff advised them, we asked them to essentially list every single sign that you're having there because we wanted to make sure that they had the capacity to do what they wanted to do both now and in the future, and not have to be coming back and amending their plans in the future. Some secondary identification signage for Bryn Mawr, specifically.
Is Bryn Mawr the child care or is Bryn Mawr the senior center?
Bryn Mawr is the child care.
Okay.
Generations is the senior. And so these are the light pole banners. They have 3 of them along West Street.
Are those out currently?
Yes, that was taken today.
And those are their light
Those are
poles.
their light poles.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's different than how we treat the CRI ones.
It's nice they don't have it over the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So, but again, we can also condition that to make sure that it stays that way, to keep it over the, oops. That's popped up there. Pillar banners. So these are along the brick pillars there. You can see them, that they've got them for the celebrating the 250th celebrations coming up there. Those blue signs along the pillars.
It's just in the lower part under the sort of
yeah,
filigree
on
roof.
one.
They're up now. You can see them.
Okay. And those 2 would be permanent signs?
I presume that they would probably be looking to have them on a rotating basis, but for some extended period.
Not limited to the whatever 30 or 90-day period.
Correct. For the temporary signage, correct.
They're putting a lot of signs up.
Well, staff asked for all.
Yeah, it's the maximal.
No, I don't mean that, but
Yeah.
yeah, they asked for all, but
But I mean, some of those didn't exist yet, right? Staff, I mean,
So, some do not exist yet.
Right, so-
Some have been
some are-
put up
yeah.
without permits. We're seeking to bring them into compliance through this process. Part of it also was we had to go through a process first to establish the different uses of the property as well, because previously under the prior zoning, some of the uses that they had were not actually permitted at that location in terms of the senior center and what have you.
so they have like having 3 signs on those 3 pillars looks like an overkill. I mean, you're going to say the same thing on all 3, right? Are they?
I don't know.
I think there's some slight variation on these signs, but they are.
I can see it. A sign saying "Eat at Joe's" in front of the church.
Maybe they'll hire you as an aesthetic consultant.
Well, again, they would not be permitted to have what we call off-site signage, so they couldn't advertise a business not located off.
I understand
there, but
Well, they set up a Joe's restaurant next door.
as long as we're on the property, if we're on the adjoining one, it would be prohibited.
But that's a lot of building there too.
Correct. There's a whole lot of frontage in terms of the square footage that they have for those.
But did they only get credit for the auxiliary building, or do they get credit also for the church frontage?
Oh, we would certainly give them credit for the entirety of the structure. It's all one structure. It's all attached, that has frontage along there. The entrance wall signs for both the Playdate and the Hispanic church. They're proposing to add a historic marker sign. And then the miscellaneous temporary signs that they have as well. As I noted, staff is planning to walk the site with them to ensure that we've got everything, because we had noted on there, we saw the one, they have an awning sign as well that hadn't been captured. There's a number of signs on the doors as well that weren't captured. So we're going to try and make sure that we have everything listed and documented in there. Look to grant them some growth flexibility, provide the commission with the comparison against what would be permitted by right, so that you can make an informed decision But the goal that we would have in terms of conversation, the introduction, is just what are the concerns that the commission have? Because again, as a conditional use permit, the town has the ability to prescribe conditions, and so we want to know what potential conditions we can draft for your consideration that you may wish to see applied in this instance.
Yeah, I think anything that distracts drivers on west and especially west and on the back on the Blue Ridge side is where my biggest concerns would be.
How many electronic signs are there?
So they're only proposing the one electronic sign on West. I believe that the ones on Blue Ridge probably will be lit in some manner, these Brynmore ones.
I just don't understand. But again, we can't deal with content, so it doesn't really.
Can't deal with content.
Right. Why are you advertising where you're keeping children? Yes.
Yeah, I don't think they've quite made that last establishment.
Right. So.
But again, if the planning commission feels that it ends up being outside the scope of what's permitted, that it's too much signage along there, or again, given the residential nature of Blue Ridge, there could be a desire to see more limited signage along that particular road.
And then what are the rules on the new electronic? So it has to stay static, but it obviously the message will change. So what is the frequency that they are permitted to change that message?
I believe, and it's written in there off the top of my head, I believe it's 8 seconds.
I think
Every 8 seconds.
Every 8 seconds they can change. Again, they can't scroll it out. They can't sort of, do any sort of graphic out. Essentially, it would simply replace the text with the new text, so to speak.
Right.
Difficult for drivers to read, but passengers could.
Well, I'm just worried about past drivers who are already on a screen. I don't want drivers who are already on a screen looking at another screen.
That's true. No, I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, again, I think the 8 seconds from a timing perspective is such that they would likely just see the one message.
And actually, you may not see that if you're driving. I go by the Catholic Church all the time. I look at it and it changes. And guess what? I'm watching the road. Right. I can't be that.
or if they stop there to see
Yeah.
where the men's
Well,
breakfast
still
is,
Oh, yeah, right.
And again,
wait for it to change.
if the commission has a concern over that, you can set the condition to be that a more delayed period if desired.
My biggest deal would be that you weren't reading it, like you're literally just driving down the road, but all you see is a flat, some change, so that you're now aware of something happening that's not, but you're not actually aware of it. Distraction.
Well, the
That's why essentially we prohibit the scrolling, the flat,
Right.
Anything along those lines.
Yes, that'd distract you. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost easier if it's just flat. But I appreciate the fact they want video because it's obviously easier to change and update. So
Yeah, it looks nice in here. And we already have one of what do you call them? AGCO signs, flashing.
They're not permitted.
Well, there's one on the car wash at 522, and one.
You can have the digital signs, but they're not permitted to have the motion.
Yeah, it's very dynamic. But I don't mean to make a beef about that. But I also like neighborhood character is a consideration as well. That it's.
So again, this is where the commission can weigh in. If you would prefer that the signs on this side mirror the monument sign on the front side, that's something that the commission can express as a potential condition. Again, that's not related to the content; it's related to the form of the sign itself.
This sign is by right, though.
They have the ability to do monument signs by right.
I see.
But what they're coming for is a conditional use permit. The digital sign under the UDO now requires a conditional use permit, so that would be.
But for this sign in particular would be by right, or would
they would be able to
require-
do the monument signs here by right?
Is that a monument sign?
That is what that is, yes, the style that we would consider a monument sign. It's essentially a ground mounted sign.
Okay. But I do, to your point, I think if they did have something that was bricked, like the one in the front, it would be within the character of the property.
Yeah, I agree. Or a monument sign that looks like, a historic marker or something like that is also kind of tasteful and in keeping with the general appearance of the neighborhood. But if you put up a sign that looks like a housing for sale sign, a housing listing sign, it takes on a distinctly commercial appearance, if that's fair. Sorry, I'm not good at you.
Yeah, it's okay. So we don't know what content, and this is just an example right here. I mean, I don't know.
I believe their intent is to advertise Bryn Mawr with these signs on.
All around the building?
Well, these are all.
I mean, they already have one on the fence. You can see it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
that's some kind of vinyl sign or something. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Well, they might not.
There's a chain link fence.
They're taking the maximum position. They may be happy with that and sign fence. They might just be saying that this is something we might want to do in the future, right? They're giving you the maximum.
Correct. The vast majority of what they've indicated here, I believe, is in their fairly near future in terms of what they would like to implement. We're trying to make sure that they think long term and include everything so that they don't have to come back and look to amend this. But
Is there any constraint on the number or size of the monument signs that they can put up, or is it?
there is.
Okay.
There is.
Is it a maximum total, right?
Correct. There's a maximum size limitation.
And every individual sign you put up counts against that maximum.
Correct. Yes. And as I said, there's a maximum height limitation as well.
And this permit would allow them to exceed the current the UDO maximum, or
Not necessarily. Again, as I said, we'll run the full analysis of the staff report for you, so you have that before you. We have not done it yet, just because we've been working with them to try and finalize as much information as we could to be able to bring it to you this evening.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. So, but this is good to see now, but we'll see this again.
Again, the one thing I will ask is if there's anything that you've noted that you would like staff to have in consideration as we look to draft potential conditions for you for consideration at the public hearing, because that will be when you would impose those conditions.
I do feel like, as a general, having gone through these signs, we've sort of come to the conclusion that less is more. And that wayfinding certainly makes a lot of sense, but anything that strikes, I don't know. Anyway, like, yes, the wayfinding should be the primary.
I think we've also heard an interest in cohesiveness of the signs, so potentially looking to mimic the style of those on the backside, the monuments on the backside of the front, potentially looking for greater certainty or assurances as it relates to the wall-mounted signs, a potential consistency there as well. Again, from my perspective, the color distinction there also is a little jarring with sort of the yellowish top sign versus the white individual entity signs. So again, I don't know if that's something that the Planning Commission has concern about. And again, we'll look to give you the information to let you know whether this would be permitted by right or if it's something that is outside the norms. But again, if there's a preference in terms of the style of the presentation there, we can certainly look to share that with the church, as well as potentially compose a possible condition the Planning Commission could seek to impose.
So it says, I'm just reading what's in the application. It says blanket temporary sign approvals for church activity. Blanket temporary sign approval to church activities and mission partner activity. So they're asking you to go put up temporary signs, all of them.
And that's
whenever they want.
That's part of what we're going to be having the conversation with them with, to get a little bit more specificity on it, because I don't think there's a comfort level, certainly not at the staff level, and I can't imagine from the Planning Commission, for complete carte blanche in that regard.
And wayfinding interval signage directing visitors to town approved uses identified by April use forms submitted and approved. I don't understand that.
So I think that's largely these sort of tenant menu boards to help direct folks to.
Town approved uses identified by April use forms.
That's relative to, we recently went through the process.
We put up for the town. The town put up.
No, this is not for signs. This is related to the actual uses in the building.
Oh.
Previously, we only had the church as an approved use within the building. Because again, we couldn't allow them to advertise for uses that weren't approved.
Okay. And
Oh, yeah, well, that changed the zoning. They have adult care and child care and everything.
That was part of why we looked to address through the UDO. The previous zoning did not allow all of those uses that they had at the site. The NX zoning that it has now does allow all of the uses that they have within that building.
so when I think they're using the word monument sign in a different way than you're using it. It says, the application says update existing monument sign to Bearville message board. So they're just talking about the one front sign there.
That's the one monument sign that you're talking about up there.
When you say monument, you're talking about a whole genre of signs that are ground mounted.
Essentially the ground mounted ones.
So there's no reference to those signs in here. But you're saying those are the ones that are by right and have to determine whether they're constrained by the UDO by calculating the area.
Correct. Yeah. All of the signs, with the exception of the electronic message board, are by right sign types. Again, we're just going to be examining the scope and scale of how much.
The ones on the side high on the side of the building are by right.
You can have wall mounted signs by right. We haven't measured the actual size of those relative to what they're permitted, but you can have wall mounted signs by right. That's essentially the vast majority of commercial signs that we see are wall mounted signs.
And that's because it's zoned mixed use commercial, which is our fallback convention for church properties.
Correct.
How close are they to the sort of the line where the ARB would have to say?
They are not within the historic district. Okay. So
why are
It'd be nice to make it there for problem.
if these are by right, why are they coming to us? Because we haven't determined the spatial extent that's allowable.
Well, again, with a comprehensive sign plan, it's looking at the whole property and looking at all of the signs. We felt the most appropriate to do that. So we're pulling
until we've determined that, they're just putting everything out.
we're pulling in what's by right as well as what's outside of it.
Right.
Again,
We're
with a
requesting a
comprehensive view.
deviation from the by right, or an extension of the by right.
Correct. And in the staff report, that's where we're going to highlight it, essentially where they're deviating from the by right potential.
And it's similar to what we did with the veterinarian's office, where they could just put one big sign on the side of the building that listed everything they do. But instead of that, they're using the same square footage and splitting it up over multiple signs.
In many ways, the closest comparable that I see this to is the comprehensive sign plan that we did for the hospital, where again, they had the multiple signs, different nature of the signs, different intents.
Wayfinding and
Yeah. Okay.
urologist here and imaging here. Or
Correct.
Okay. All right. This sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Everybody ready to move on? All right. Next item, legislative update. Thank you very much for this one, Andrew. Go ahead.
Sure. And I'm going to try and keep this fairly brief and just look at the legislation that actually made it through at least the General Assembly. Again, some of them are still up in the air relative to the governor. So the first is going to be related to manufactured housing. The second is our one related to off-street parking requirements. This is the one that probably may have the largest impact on the town. The third is related to affordable housing on properties owned by religious entities or other nonprofit tax-exempt properties. And the final one is related to accessory dwelling units. So HB 655, sort of this is the summary version of it. Essentially what it requires localities to do is to treat manufactured homes the same as regular stick-built conventional homes. So what we're proposing to do is in our text, when we have the allowed building types, essentially note that a manufactured home that has been converted to real property in accordance with the Code of Virginia section and constructed so that the certificate of occupancy is issued within 5 years following the date of manufacture listed on the home's data plate and placed on an individual lot is permitted as a detached house type. So essentially we're going to treat it the same as a detached housing. So largely this is verbatim language that's coming out of the bill from the General Assembly. So really, it's not going to have a huge impact. We don't see a lot of these here in town. For the most part, our land is too valuable to not put a stick-built home because these would have lower assessed values and lower resale values for developers.
A lot of places they're building stick-built homes in a factory.
Yeah, the prefab ones.
Yeah, and they're just like a regular stick.
And we would allow those.
Yeah, no, and you should, because that's a manufactured home.
Well, it's different. These are essentially
No, I know what you're talking about. But
yeah,
it could be assumed.
yeah. Essentially, that's the difference. These are manufactured. Those are what they call prefabricated.
Okay.
But again, I get the two mixed up. But these ones they're talking about essentially the ones that are built on a chassis with wheels and everything else.
Trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so this is relatively innocuous in terms of its impact on us, and so this is the one update that we've got to the UDO related to this. House Bill 888. This is the one that would have a significant impact on the town as this relates to minimum off-street parking requirements for residential developments. It would come into effect as it was originally drafted in the House within a half mile of any sort of transit stop, which include our bus stops. We did I forgot to include the map in the slides, but we did a map. It included almost the entire, it's in the back, but I forgot to put it in the slides. It includes almost the entirety of town. And so in the instance that were to go through, we would look to likely incorporate it town-wide. That being said, the governor has provided some recommended changes to the ordinance. And essentially it would remove who would be impacted by this and essentially remove us from qualifying or falling under these provisions of having to provide these reduced or limiting our ability to require off-street parking. The only aspect that would apply to us is that we would have to provide some provision to allow for a 20%, an administratively reviewed 20% reduction in the off-street parking requirements. And so what I've proposed as far as the language in the UDO update is essentially to allow for this request to be made for an administrative reduction in the parking by 20% if they are within 600 feet of a public parking area, either a parking lot or garage, that has safe pedestrian accommodations from that parking area to their primary door, to their front door. So essentially a sidewalk with crosswalks the entire way, and that the parking facility be open to the general public at all times. So, those mirror a lot of the things that we currently had in place related to satellite parking. And so it seemed like a way to go to comply with the state code changes. Again, this has not yet been adopted. These are simply the recommendations that have been made by the governor. We'll have to see how it ultimately plays out, because if the House rejects those and goes back to their original one, we may have to put in something more impactful.
Does this come into play more when you're talking about something like multifamily, where we're talking about multiple spaces versus each house? I mean, when we say each house has to have 3 off street,
it would
20%. But it said minimum 20%. So literally, it would pull one probably out of all of every house would go down one.
It would not, because again, with our partials, we round up.
Okay.
So even if it at the 2.4 spaces you'd have to provide for a single family, you'd still have to provide 3. So for our single family,
even with 20% off, so even with the 0.5 off, and now that 1.9,
because it's 3 spaces that you have to provide per single family.
I see.
So it's 2.4 with the 20% discount.
Okay.
And as I said, that rounds up to the 3.
Okay.
For the multifamily, yes, it would be able to limit it. Similarly, if they did the townhouse development with some communal parking, it could limit it in that instance as well.
Okay.
So this drastically reduces the minimum parking requirement. Is that correct?
If the original version that was approved by the House goes through, that's the governor's edits. So with the governor's edits, it takes us out of the localities that are impacted by that.
Okay. I'm not following.
So the version that the House approved and sent to the governor,
Right,
was applied almost statewide. Essentially, anybody who had any sort of mass transit would have to impose these fairly significant reductions on their required off-street parking within a half.
That's what I was asking, right? No.
Now then, the governor sent back amendments to the House.
Right. Yeah, no, I follow that. So this is the House version.
No, that is those are the red in there are the governor's edits.
Oh, the red, because I thought the red was stricken out.
A lot of it is. The governor did strike a lot of the language.
But this part here is already a pretty drastic reduction, 1.5 parking space per multi-family dwelling unit, not more than that.
Correct, but in the governor's revisions, that would not apply to us because we're not a designated area. We don't meet the criteria under the governor's revised definitions of a designated area.
I see. Then the criteria is distance from a mass transit or public transportation. Okay.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay, there's a logic to it. Okay.
Right. Yeah. As I said, the original one was much more widespread in terms of its application. So again, we're going to be following this. We'll see what happens in terms of the resolution. Our hope is that they end up sticking with the governor's version because it makes it much easier for us to implement. All right. Our next one is Senate Bill 388. This is related to affordable housing, religious organizations, and other nonprofit tax exempt. This is the one we've talked about that essentially would allow church-owned property for them to develop affordable housing regardless of the underlying zoning. In many ways, we got ahead of this to some extent with the NX zoning on our ones that allows a lot of it. The other thing that this would allow would be single family that the NX does not allow. But again, that's one that we'll have to see how it plays out in this instance. So this one also has some edits from the governor. They're not very significant in terms of their impact on the town as to those changes. So we'll have something going through. I've been in consultation with the town attorney. This would be extremely difficult for us to write into the zoning ordinance. And so it's one where my conversation with that is to potentially address it if we have an application that seeks to claim the exemption under this, to essentially process it then in conjunction with the state code and the town code. So where the state code superseded the town code, we would apply it that way. And where the town code still applied, we'd apply it that way. But rather than trying to write it in, because it would be very, very difficult to do so.
And we could still restrict some of the form.
We still have all of our form-based components would still apply. There's nothing in the state legislature in what they propose that limits our ability to utilize the form.
What makes it hard to write into our?
Because it's not based on zoning so much as ownership of the property. And so to try and write into the code something based on the ownership of the property where it's going to, potentially has the potential to change over time, I'd be very leery to do so.
Right, especially with state
Different set of
supersedes it
principles.
anyway.
Yeah. Right.
And this has a sunset clause in it too.
Okay.
That ordinance is set, or that state code provision is set to expire, I think, in 2031.
What's the gist of it?
We're trying to add affordable housing.
Yeah, but
It's essentially allowing by right development of affordable housing on church-owned property.
This would also allow like a church to buy like the Charlottesville Mall.
No, because it has to have been owned by the religious entity for at least 5 years before they could come to you. So again, it's specifically to prevent something like that, or for a church partnering up with a developer to go buy something, and to see a windfall that way.
how could that be justified? That's a topic for another. I'll buy you a beer and you tell me.
So
Okay.
so again, we'll see how that plays out. But it likely is going to go through in some form and have some implication, but probably not result in the need for changes to the UDO. We'll look to implement it on a case-by-case basis should they arise. Senate Bill 531 is related to accessory dwelling units. This is one that I sort of gave an indication to the commission that I thought was going to be coming at some point. So this essentially requires that localities allow ADUs by right. It is problematic in that it does not allow more restrictive setback requirements or size requirements than you would have on an accessory dwelling or on the primary dwelling. So conceivably, because we allow accessory structures within 2 feet of property lines, ADUs could be within 2 feet of property lines, whereas we had set up the provision so we had at least 10 feet off of those. Similarly, we have the 1,000 square foot limitation on ADUs. This does not allow you to set a limitation on ADUs.
But it would still allow us to charge like for water and sewer.
We can still charge for let me get to the next slide, because here's the big news. We're grandfathered.
right.
Because we adopted before January 1st of 2026 our ADU ordinance, ours remains vested and in place. We're not required to comply with the state code change. And so again, I'm chalking this one up as a win, if you recall, encouraging us to do it because I was worried that they were going to do something like that. And I'm just glad that they included that vesting option.
Bill and
language in
rule
there.
states begins to crumble.
Right.
But the end is nigh.
So those are the impacts. It ended up being a whole lot tamer. Again, we still have to see the outcome on House Bill 888. That's the one that potentially still could cause some difficulties for us. But on the whole, I think we did better than I was expecting at one point in terms of the legislation. Again, it's going to be a constant thing year over year to do it. There is the push for the provision of more housing. That's been the genesis of a lot of these bills. But I think we've done a good job with the UDO of allowing for creative provision of housing. So, all right. So that wraps
Grab
up
that one.
the legislative one.
All right, then let's move to the next one, which is the Unified Development Ordinance
So-
Amendment Initiation.
Absolutely. So, what we've got here is I've got a number of proposed amendments to the UDO as well as to the zoning map, and I will try and move through these very, very quickly. We've got three categories of changes to the UDO: those that are driven by the legislature, those that are driven by sort of typos or small errors that we found, and those that have been driven by sort of the experience of what we've had implementing the UDO so far to date. So the legislature, we touched base on this one. This is related to the manufactured home. So this is the language that we identified earlier. The other one, this is the 20% reduction for the parking. So the typo changes, again, we've got the sections there. We're correcting a mislabeled heading. We had, in the second one, we had referenced the ability to do an additional story with a setback, but we hadn't provided the actual guidance under that particular building type. So we pulled the building type information over for that and added it in. Corrected a mislabeled heading, corrected a heading formatting, spelling typo, missing section label, grammatical typo. So those are all pretty innocuous changes as we saw them. From experience changes related to our awnings and canopies, we're looking to add a little bit more flexibility here. So all awnings and canopies shall appear to be canvas or metal. Hard plastic awnings are prohibited. What we found is most awnings these days are made actually from a synthetic plastic polymer. And so the prior language, the existing language prohibition on plastic is proving to be problematic in terms of them having the durability of material that they want. We believe that the intent was for those not to allow those hard plastic ones. And so we feel like this addresses that. The second has to do with our landscaping and essentially allows for our landscape plans to be prepared by an engineer if they're using the plants that we identify within our facility standards manual and essentially following the guidelines that we have in there. It only requires them to go outside and bring in a landscape architect or an arborist if they're deviating from what we have essentially pre-approved within the UDO and the facility standards manual. We felt that just made more sense than them having to bring one in and a first or a landscape architect on every project. Similarly, as it has to do with trees on sites, right now the language says that they have to identify all trees on the sites, which, as you can imagine, on the larger sites becomes problematic. So we've essentially made it so they have to identify specimen trees that they're removing, and then you can see the next update is to give that definition of specimen trees, which is found within our FSM, and just referencing that FSM so we don't have potentially conflicting definitions in places in the future.
Do you think that just taking the word all is going to solve the problem there in the first sentence?
Well, because essentially what we're requiring them to do with that table in the last one is specifically identifying that it's the specimen trees that are being removed that they have to identify. Because those are what we're most concerned about, is where they're taking out the larger mature trees.
Right. Okay. All right.
All right, so this one, I apologize for the small font here. It's a larger section, but this is related to adding back in satellite parking. The prior zoning ordinance had satellite parking, allowing for off-site parking. We didn't have that in the UDO. We had neglected to bring it over. So this is largely bringing back the provisions that we had before, essentially allowing for that satellite parking where it's within 600 feet. That 600 feet should ring a bell from what we were talking about earlier. And essentially requiring that they have the documentation of the ability to, so there's a shared agreement to be able to utilize that space. So we felt like this made sense to add back in. Under personal vehicle repair and maintenance, adding or specifying that windshield and glass repair or replacement it falls under that category. Again, just making this overt so there's not any question related to that. Related to the home-based businesses and the home occupations, we previously had specifically precluded taxi, limo, van, or bus services. We felt like that actually was not so much the intent as it was what we have listed as J there, which is the outside storage of these marked vehicles for these things. If they have a vehicle where they're running a medical transport van service, but they're able to store those in a garage on site, so there's no outward appearance of any sort of business there, but are essentially using the place as the office and sort of the dispatch for that vehicle that they drive. We thought that was appropriate and remained within the intent of how we had drafted that home-based business section.
And then this doesn't apply to anyone who may drive a branded vehicle.
And this was the irony. This was the hard time we were having, essentially, because if it's not your business, but you're driving a branded one, you can park in your driveway, no problem. If it's your business that you're running out of your home, you can't park it there. And so we still have that, but essentially now you can at least have the business as long as you can park the vehicle in your garage.
If you registered your business to a PO box in Orange, then you could still have your car branded. If you're a tree service, let's say.
Conceivably, yeah. I don't want to get into the clerk's office with how they handle business licenses, but from our perspective, yeah, if your place of business was identified as somewhere else,
yeah, then you could have, you wouldn't need to store it. You wouldn't have to. Okay.
Right. Then the next one there, 27-6.50.2C, is related to expanding the contractors and services. They're making the distinction of that they're permitted in that instance if they're not storing items outside. This came up recently because we have someone who's looking to do carpet cleaning, where they go out on site to do the carpet cleaning. But that right now falls under our industrial use category because they store the equipment at the location. Again, as long as they're storing it indoors, we didn't see really any difference between that and other relatively innocuous uses that could be performed under that general office category, because there's a specific carve out that it's essentially an office function as long as you're not storing the materials. But again, you're going to store them indoors. You've got to store the equipment somewhere for these things. But as long as they're not outdoors and have that visual impact, we felt it was okay.
As long as they're not double the chemicals in the sewer.
That too, yes.
You go up to Lowe's and they store everything outside.
We've had conversations with them.
Oh, okay.
Looking to add language to essentially exempt sheds under 200 square feet from having to match the facade materials of the primary structure. Again, if you're going to buy your prefabricated shed from Lowe's or somewhere else, it can be very difficult to make sure that it matches there. And so we felt that 200 square feet was an appropriate size.
200 square feet seems generous. Since most of those you're going to buy, I mean, that's a 20 by 10. Right, I was looking at Lowe's website today to try to get some sense, and most of the things they're doing are maybe 50 or 100 square feet.
We can certainly reduce it if there's a desire from the Planning Commission.
No, not necessary. Actually, you get smaller ones. I bought a shed, and the siding, the roof, everything are identical to the house, because they asked me what I wanted. And it's small.
I mean, your big issue here would be greenhouses, right? Or something.
Okay.
I mean, I'm gonna put a 20 by 10 greenhouse with that.
But I guess the question is, would a 20 by 10 greenhouse be objectionable or seem incongruent if it didn't match the main structure?
It's not going to. It's not going to have siding on it. It's going to have screening and
What if it blocks the sun from my neighbor's flower garden?
there. Oh yeah, okay,
Right? I'm just right.
yeah.
I guess that's my job.
Well, I guess it would block the sun from your neighbor's flower garden, even if it matched in terms of the
Oh, true.
the siding and everything else.
That's a good point.
What's the square footage where you need a zoning permit for a shed?
An accessory structure is supposed to have a zoning permit regardless of the size.
And it limits how close you get the property edge there. The rest 2 feet, something like that.
But it doesn't have to match with this.
Well, this would right now under the UDO, it would have to match. This carves out an exemption, and I think what the concern is being expressed that maybe it's too big of an exemption in terms of the size.
Well, the funny thing is that really what we've spelled out is that it's supposed to match your house, right? And so, I to be honest, as far as the UDO is concerned, as long as the materials looked fine, right? I mean, as long as then I don't know that we would want to add the burden to homeowners to have to go out and basically custom make the shed to match the metal, to match the siding and roof of their house.
Yeah, they make so many sheds. They're already custom made.
Yeah.
Everything you buy is pretty much you specify everything you want.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, so if somebody just wanted to go get a shed,
Oh, yeah, down the Lowe's.
a lot cheaper. And so so that's sort of the deal, right? I mean, it's like does the UDO exist to make sure that sheds match primary residence, or does the UDO exist to make sure that nothing looks junky? And the reality is it's the second one,
yeah.
right?
Well, still, if it's red and yellow and your house is white, it's going to be pretty ugly sitting in your backyard for the rest of your neighborhood.
Especially if every house in your neighborhood is brick, and this one is red. Yeah, yeah. So what is 200 too big?
Well, they're not allowed in the front yard.
How long are these tables?
5 feet, I think.
Mm-hmm. So that's 10 feet. So that by
4.
what is this? Where? Yeah.
It's about 4 feet, yeah, maybe 5.
I mean, this room is
Such a front yard. I don't think it needs to match.
this whole room is probably 20.
That's big.
It's big.
It is big.
18.
So I'm taking 18. Yeah, so it's bigger than this room width, and wider than basically this width of 2 of those tables. That's a pretty big shed.
It's a big shed.
Great.
Yeah. Let's set it at 100 and see if anybody complains.
Again,
200 is
I mean, 200 is a barn.
It's a big place. It's a garage.
Accessory dwelling. Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, certainly is that. Then it has the magic of.
okay. Outdoor storage areas. This had referenced a design exception. You don't have a design exception listed anywhere else in the code, so we think this was just a residual from an early draft of the code, and so looking to make that an administrative modification if no other options exist. The bottom one there is simply changing the plurality or removing the plurality to make it clear that all food trucks, even if you have multiple at a location, require individual permits. The top one here is adding back a provision we'd added a couple years ago, and it's specific to the CRI banner signs in the downtown area, essentially exempting them from the need to come through for individual permits every time those are updated. 27.8.40.3H is adding language prohibiting signs on utility poles, including flags and flag mounts. We've seen a number of issues with those. Right now, there's a very odd reference to state code that is problematic from an enforcement perspective, and so this would give us greater ability to restrict that because they are a safety concern if anybody has to actually climb the utility pole if those have been placed on those.
I've seen some poles that had speed limits on it. No individual contributor is going to put one in. So we must have done it somewhere.
We'll have to look and see. Yeah, but they shouldn't be on the utility poles because, as I said, I mean, I'm sure Mr. Flanagan can attest that.
They're not allowed.
Yeah,
The utility has the right to review that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
but it gives the town greater ability to enforce it if we have it listed in here.
Sure.
And similarly, temporary signs on light poles. This one, for the top one here, the electronic message displays, as I mentioned earlier, currently they're only permitted in this UDO with a conditional use permit. We wanted to create a carve out for fuel dispensing, the signs essentially showing the prices of gas, because we felt it was onerous for that to have to go through a conditional use permit for that sign. So essentially we stated, we create the carve out if they're being proposed with a fueled pump, that you could essentially have that without having to go through a conditional use permit.
What is the logic of that? Why a fuel pump?
So that essentially the specifically the gas price signs that are digital, because otherwise every time a gas station.
No, I got it.
Yeah. 27.8.110, we wanted to add language in there, specifying, because right now it listed that you can have unlimited flags. We want to make it clear you can have unlimited flags unrelated to or not related to advertising. Yeah. So you could have Virginia, Culpeper, those are all fine, but similarly in the table underneath the two tables, limited to one advertising flag per business and unlimited flags not related to advertising. Again, just try to close what we saw as a loophole there.
Yeah.
Related to certificates of fine, again, this is related to, again, this the CRI signs that essentially the banner signs installed on public infrastructure, including the color, are exempt from requiring a certificate of finding. This is adding in a whole section related to zoning permits. We realized there was nothing formally codifying zoning permits within the UDO. So this adds in, this is largely the language that existed under the prior zoning ordinance. The one thing that we've changed here is that we've essentially made a zoning permit only valid for 2 years or shorter period as defined on the permit itself. Just feeling like this was an appropriate time, like the time for folks to be able to implement whatever it is. And if they exceed that, they'd have to come back and comply with whatever the code was at that time. This is related to height and the interpretation of height. So within what we've talked about throughout this process with the UDO is essentially that with form-based code, we're concerned about the form, the fit, the outside, the exterior, the appearance, how it interplays with the pedestrian realm, and we're not really concerned what goes on the inside. So this is essentially codifying that as it relates to height, so that if you articulate the outside so it looks like you have 4 stories, you may inside only have 2 stories or 1 story. But to all intents and purposes, you've made it look to the outside like you have 4. So if you think about like your big box stores, your Walmarts, where they have the high ceilings and everything else in there, right now under the UDO, that would be potentially problematic if you interpreted it at the sort of the floor height at sort of maximum of 16 feet or whatever the case may be. So again, we felt the whole argument with the UDO is how it looks and feels from the outside, give you flexibility on the inside. So this is essentially looking to do that as it relates to how we look at height and stories and that interpretation.
Yeah, so you don't just see a 40-foot unbroken wall.
Correct. You would see potentially the tiers of windows and then the articulation of the different heights to make it appear. All right, so those are the text changes. We now get to the zoning map changes. This is the Methodist Church. We discussed about this, looking to have it transition to the NX in the same vein as the other churches in town. This is Country Club Estates. The vast majority of these parcels here are open space parcels that we're looking to transition to parks and open space. Again, as we discussed when we went through the UDO process, the reason that we do this is 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we avoid folks coming in, having acquired these properties, maybe from an HOA that went defunct or something like that, and looking to try and develop them as residential lots. So it helps to make sure that we preserve the open space in perpetuity. So that's the Country Club Estates. These are a couple of open space lots that we had missed. Elizabeth's Crossing and Ridgeview, it's the same thing there. We've got the one on the left side with Elizabeth's Crossing, the 2 related to Ridgeview and the stormwater management. This is Highview Court in the vicinity of the water tower. We've got the 2 parcels there. that we're proposing transition to the open parks and open space. Lakeview and Palos Reach, again, we've got the couple of parcels that are dotted in there. They're very, very thin there. You can see them essentially behind the townhouses in that area there, and then adjacent to the apartments where we're looking to make those the open space. In the meadows, again, it's a couple of small parcels at sort of at the end of blocks that we're looking to transition to the parks and open space because they're open space parcels. In the meadows as well, this is one that was essentially bisected by the road. We had previously identified one as parks and open space and one was under the PUD. We've got that as the PUD. The other one that's interesting here is, as you can see, that we have the parcel right here that's shown as PUD, and we're actually looking to transition that to RS. The reason is that was, we discovered, was misclassified with the PUD way back when the PUD went through. It was actually not part of the PUD. And so we've looked to pull it out and put it in the same zoning category as its neighboring properties.
Is that, is that where, is there a little park there now?
There may well be. It's not developed, that parcel. The road currently actually sort of essentially curves this way around.
I think there is some kind of park.
It may essentially naturally occurring sort of little pocket park may have formed there.
Yeah, because I think where does that NX blue square property?
That's school property.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, 'cause, anyway, years ago we used to practice like little league baseball there, so I know that there was like a little parking area, and we would use the field there. So it's interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting if somebody tried to stick a single family house on that one.
They would have to do some. It's going to be a little tricky because they're going to have to do some road improvements just with the alignment of the road right there to give themselves an entrance and the ability to have a driveway. But again, it didn't feel appropriate to keep it as the end of the PUD regulation since it wasn't originally approved that way. Virginia Avenue, again, some open space parcels within the development there that we're looking to transition to the parks and open space. So again, we're asking Planning Commission this evening to initiate an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance for the items that we identified, with the one change that we identified related to the accessory structure size, as well as the zoning map changes.
And then that would be for a public hearing in May.
We would look to bring that for public hearing in May.
All right, so you need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
Good job.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. Yes, thank you on that, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so, and we're done there?
Down there.
All right, so we're moving on. All right, so at this point, we're to the point of other business. We do have, there is no other business?
No other business.
All right, so then we're at follow-up items, which is the comprehensive plan update. I've just wanted to see how everybody's doing. Does anybody need a break?
I can't believe we're going to start in on this at this time, 2 hours in after 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I suggest we we forego the discussion.
This will be good.
Tweaking the plan.
I mean, yeah,
We've canceled.
there is no work session next week.
Okay.
So you're basically getting 2 for 1.
So
This will be fast though, right?
I can keep it pretty fast. It'll depend on how much discussion the Planning Commission wishes to have.
And maybe, it's on the agenda. Do we have to have it?
You can defer action. You can defer this conversation. That's what I'm
All right.
Is there a timeline at all?
no.
I think it's a good point, right? Why bring it up if we're not actually going to talk about it?
But if it's just a few minutes discussion and we getting some feedback on the time,
Okay.
and then we'll be a little feedback. But
Right.
I'm not going to be a good contributor to a long-term discussion.
All right, I'll just say out here, like, as my watch, I've got 8:14 in a second, and at 8:30 we'll reevaluate. If we get past 8:30, we're in trouble. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay.
Very fair.
All right. Thanks.
Sorry to be a weak link.
Yeah.
So again, Mr. Fitzgerald, you had asked at the last meeting
Yeah.
for an update to the timeline, and so I've got up on the slide. I provided the more detailed version there, but up on the slide is essentially the concise version. We're working hopefully to finish up the visioning at this meeting with hopefully the outcome being an adopted vision and our chapters or themes. Thereafter, we'd move into the surveys, spend the next 3 months or so working on surveys of the community to get their feedback on key issues related to the themes that we've identified. Working then from June through September, so we'd have some overlap of the work going on to identify existing conditions that we would prepare a report to share with the Planning Commission on that. Then look to take our sort of chapters, our headings and themes, and develop actual work groups with probably 2 planning commissioners per work group, along with members of the community who are interested or experts within those particular fields, to develop the key points, the key considerations that they want to see incorporated into the comprehensive plan and those related to those themes. Staff would then take all of that and sort of the outcome of that would be a policy framework. Staff would take that policy framework that had been developed and develop that work to pull together an actual draft plan through the work session process with the Planning Commission. That would be from March of next year through June of next year, likely, coming up with an initial public draft that we would look to share then for public review in July and August. Make revisions in terms of feedback we were receiving from the public at that time, with the goal of bringing it to public hearing in September and October of next year.
Everyone comfortable with that timeline?
Again, it can certainly shift as we go through the process, but it gives us something to work with.
When you have surveys budgeted for 2 months, months 4 to 6, that means that's the only the public will have 2 months to comment and that's it.
No, because again, we're going to have the surveys to the general public that'll go out of the
It's
various
just
themes.
one process in collecting public comment
Correct.
among several.
We're
Okay.
then going to have the work groups, which would have members of the public invited in as well, and potentially they could be identified through the survey process. We could sort of have one of the questions be, would you like to participate in a work group related to this? And then finally, the public is also going to have the opportunity to do a review of the full draft and provide comment before we get to the public hearing stage.
Is the survey a paper survey or an online survey, or is there an online portal for a general public to chime in on?
We're anticipating both a paper and an online one.
Super, great, thank you.
Again, we're not locked into
Yeah,
these dates.
I
but it
think
gives
this
us-
is reasonable. Yeah, we're not setting ourselves up to fail here.
And it's a nice framework for us to kind of monitor our progress against. So thank you very much for doing that.
Sure. Which then brings us to sort of this trying to wrap up phase 1 envisioning. So staff, we'd had the conversation last time. Staff took the input that we'd heard, that we wanted to essentially have the initial sentence talk about the past and how we got here. And so we went with the town of Culpeper has developed unique character over centuries, and then focus on essentially where we're going in the future and what the components of the plan were going to be. And so we went with, as we move into our future, we will honor our natural, historic, and cultural resources while guiding growth through intentional investment. We remain steadfast in our commitment to fostering vibrant parks and open spaces, ensuring safe, connected infrastructure, and building a resilient economy and community that sustains all that is great about Culpeper. So again,
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I'm struck that I feel like there's an incongruity here. We were working for a while. It seemed like we were working towards a 1-sentence vision statement, and now we've got a more likely like a paragraph, exposition here. And I'm just curious. Am I alone in that, having that sense, or
No, actually, there's a lot of fluff in there. Let's do it.
Yeah, it keeps,
I'm not
it
saying
keeps
it's
creeping.
fluff. I'm not saying it's fluff. We might want to address it all.
The town of Culpeper has developed a unique character.
But I thought part of the art of the vision statement is we capture in one sentence sort of the sweep of the thing, and then we could add a paragraph below that elaborates a little bit. If we haven't made a change, that's okay. But which is better? Why do we think it's better?
I don't have a problem with what he has there, but a vision statement should tell you what we're going to do. Not because of this,
Right.
what we're going to do. I don't, that means like the first sentence should be out. And actually the first part of the second sentence. it should start. We will honor our natural history and that sort of thing.
I believe last time we decided to leave what we had as a placeholder.
Yeah.
Go to the pillars and work on the meat. And if we found that the draft vision didn't support the pillars, we would create something that would support the pillars.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Again, the only problem I'd have is telling the history, not the future.
I think it's good to just keep. Yes, I agree with everything that's been said, and just to back up Mr. Flanagan, all of this is placeholder at this point, and so we're not even to draft yet. So I think that's a good. I mean, I think that everything that we're thinking is definitely in there. Sure. There's just a lot of extra stuff that will one day will disappear.
Absolutely.
What is ensuring safe, connected infrastructure?
Just sidewalks.
Well, you just put vibrant parks and open space.
Well, connected is
Crossing
Infrastructure.
highways, stuff like that. They're going to have lights maybe put in, or the actually going across the railroad track. That's a safe way to get across the railroad tracks to the parking lot.
I think it's so you don't create these islands of services, right? So there's a transportation component to that, including all forms of transportation, and there's it's safe, connected infrastructure so that essentially your services all make sense and tie together.
I'm pretty sure connected infrastructure did come out of our brains. What was your thinking? What's the professional developers thinking, and what does that phrase mean to you?
Well,
it
that's always been there.
Yeah.
We've always tried to connect all of our trails and everything.
I mean, does it have a specific technical meaning in the development world?
I don't know that I would say it has
Planning
a
world.
technical meaning. Again, I think it's to the point that Mr. Searier made, that we want to not have pockets and islands of amenities. We want to have them so you can access all of them easily.
Good words for me.
And you can see how that's being done too. All of a sudden, these two parks just came together.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we're thinking that, or not. I mean, not us. You're thinking ahead.
I mean, it's a contrast. I mean, just in general, it's a contrast to like the county that has a pocket in the north, a pocket in the east, and in the middle.
Yeah, but they're kind of big to tie everything together.
I understand that, but I think I think it's good that we contrast and sort of frame ourselves in terms of what our size is and how we're all connected.
We're connected across the railroad track, for example. You don't have to exit the town to get to
That's correct. That is correct. Yes, exactly. Okay.
So again, we can hold this but the other as a placeholder. Again, I apologize. What I had heard from the last one was essentially a desire to incorporate what we had identified as the chapters very specifically into the statement. And so
it's fine. I mean, it can stay. It doesn't.
I think I want the statement to allude to the start of the chapters, kind of brush up, to presage it, looking forward. These, the grand chapters are going to address these things. Anyway, but
I don't have a problem with what's there. Just think there's a lot
Too much
more.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what we had identified was as the proposed chapters was an introduction and overview, natural, historic, and cultural resources, community character and design, land use. From my perspective, those two chapters probably lend themselves to being combined into one: community character and design and land use. We then have parks, recreation, and open space, transportation, mobility, and public infrastructure, economic development. And the reason I shared with you the economic development section is, if you look at that, from my perspective, there's really not a whole lot of policy that's in that economic development chapter. And so to me, the most effective way to incorporate economic development is throughout, as opposed to a standalone specific section within the plan. To have those things that speak to quality of life components that are going to help to attract employers, because their workforce are going to be here, to speak to the land uses that are conducive to economic development. So
the economic development goals would be not in the comprehensive plan addresses the physical substance of the town and policies guiding the organization, deployment of that physical aspect of the town. And economic development is supported by that, but is not subject to policy that governs the physical facilities and substance of it.
I think it's in the same vein. I don't know that I would articulate quite that same way, but I think it's in the same vein of what I was thinking.
We're going to get a lot of input from the economic development people. Yes,
As much as we ask.
sure.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, maybe all that's
Right.
They are eager, and one of their staff we have discovered maybe a closeted planner. Great deal of interest in what we do, and so I think they will, as has been alluded to, I think they will be as willing to engage with us as we are willing to have them.
good. That's good.
And then the final section of the plan being
Right.
the implementation.
It's an important.
And again, I'd like to reiterate from my perspective, my goal with this is to really have an extremely skinny, short, brief, concise, formally adopted plan that is strictly based on the policies that are of the town in the comprehensive plan, and augment that with a great deal of supplementary information that doesn't need to be adopted, to be updated, changed, modified, kept current, but integrate the two and how we present it through sort of online GIS, story maps, things of that nature, to create a fairly seamless experience that's tied in with spatial components for folks. So if folks want to understand how the comp plan impacts their property, their neighborhood, whatever, they're able to sort of integrate or interact with the plan on a spatial scale to find out what the implications are for them. I know that's a whole lot for late in the evening, and we'll continue to flesh it out, but just want to make sure that there's no significant concern with that sort of approach as we move forward.
That makes sense. I mean, especially for the shelf like a product.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there other dimensions like economic development that should be addressed by the plan, but not as their own chapter? There are social benefits that the plan should support, but does not address directly through policy guidance.
Wow. Like health and well-being kind of thing.
Well, and again, I think that that's.
Sure.
Yeah. No.
I think that does fall very much under in a similar vein to how I'm advocating that we treat economic development, because I think that that's inherent in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space module. It's also inherent in the mobility aspect of the transportation.
So there could be like another level. This is the policy guidance, and these are the aspects of residents in Culpeper that they support. And they're addressed variously through the chapters, but they are not themselves the subject focus of policy guidance.
We could very much have sort of some sort of hierarchical approach of goals and sort of tenets that we're factoring in, sort of essentially a subset that's looked at under each of these set headings as well. Because again, I think when we talk about, again, related to economic development, it's having an educated and well-rounded workforce here. Well, that to me falls under that natural, historic, and cultural resources as well, having a tie-in and a relation there to that component. So I think all of these considerations we'll want to look at and sort of, I think we'll get some input coming out of the survey as to what the community values, what are those factors to make sure that we're hitting them and addressing them throughout the plan.
Agreed. Neat.
Progress.
It's good. It's good. All right. Anything else?
That's what I have on the plan. Unless any commissioners have anything else they wish to add on.
Anybody have anything on the plan? All right. So let's move to any director updates.
Very, very briefly, wanted to let the commissioners know I'm working with APA Virginia to reserve rooms for Mr. Fitzsimmons for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night, Mr. Flanagan Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night, Mr. Clements Monday and Tuesday night for the conference later this summer. They have not opened registration yet, but we'll have a little bit of time. I wanted to make sure, though, that we got in to get the per diem room block. The second item I wanted to check with the Planning Commission, I realized today or yesterday when I had some of the public reaching out looking to contact the Planning Commission, presently on the ABC's list on the town website is only listed your phone numbers. You all do have town email addresses. I wasn't sure if there would be a preference to have your town email address or to have both listed there.
Them both should be listed.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. But look to get your town email addresses listed on there.
We wouldn't want one. Would we want one collector email address? could we just have one that was planning commission it, and then because that way you wouldn't have any ex parte kind of right. If somebody's sending something to one of us, they're sending it to all of us.
We could certainly look to do that. Again, you could certainly engage with them on a one-on-one basis. That
I like the folks who know me to feel comfortable addressing me.
Just you.
I mean, I see what the legislators say, and I don't know how to.
The problem is, if it goes out to all of us, when we reply, we just had a meeting.
if you hit reply all,
Yeah.
that would be the case. I mean, the one benefit again,
No, this would just be a forward though. So
Oh, okay.
we would set up something that just basically right. So the people would have one address to send to that would just then forward that message individually to all
But
five.
if you wanted to respond back to a person,
Then you could respond.
and
to
I
that.
wanted to respond to that person too.
That'd be two separate emails. It's not a group email.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
so essentially you'd be responding from the J. Schmidt at Culpeper.
I just don't want. I don't want somebody to send something to somebody
Yeah.
and not send it to all five.
Got you.
Right. Yeah.
Why not?
That's good thinking.
Because it just encourages
Yeah.
communication, ex parte communication, right? So, I mean, there's nothing that anyone for the public's benefit to get in touch with us that they shouldn't send to all of us. It's going to be like the email, like today's email or whatever. I mean, if somebody really wanted to just talk to you, John, they could pick up the phone or text you.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's why our phone number said.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can work with IT to look to set up one. Would you want town staff copied on that as well, or would you want it just to go to the planning commissioners?
I think
I didn't
show on it.
Weirdly, I'm okay if the staff isn't. But
again, it's the
because
prerogative of the
you're not
planning
much,
commission.
you're not. Well, actually, Kelly should be in that. She's our secretary.
Just so he knows what we're talking about when we come up with something.
Right. Well, the way my workaround is that as our secretary, Kelly's should be on there.
Well, that way it becomes part of the
The right. So then if she sends it to you, then that's not a problem. But at least somebody in the staff will get it. And that our cover is that our secretary also got a copy. Yeah. Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying we've maintained some independence from staff to this, but you're right. But our secretary gets a copy.
So what I heard, what we'll look to do is set up a planning commission email that we'll make available on the ABC listing site. We'll keep your phone numbers available there as well.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Any other commission member discussion? Mr. Flanagan? Nope. Schmidt?
I don't have anything.
All right. Just one reminder to everybody that our meeting for next week has been canceled. So our next meeting will be the regular meeting in May. So the third Tuesday in May.
How many public hearings will be at that? 2 or 3?
We are anticipating there being 3 because we would have the comprehensive sign plan, the Zeuswin rezoning, and the UDO.
I was for German.
All right. We are adjourned.
A little